Hey ladies, welcome to our channel. We are so excited and thankful that you are here. If you're new, my name is Amanda and normally I'm here with my very dear friend Esther, but today I am all by myself and this is gonna be a super special video. Very bittersweet for me. I'm really excited to share some tips to get you making the perfect cup of coffee at home. If you didn't know, I used to be a barista, used to work for Starbucks coffee and even managed for many years. And so I am going to share with you some of the insider tips and tricks so that you can make the very best cup of coffee for yourself at home. The reason why I said it was bittersweet is because this will also be my farewell video. I am very sad to say that my life path is taking me in a different direction. However, don't be too sad. Esther and I want to make sure that you guys know I will still be showing my face here and there in some videos with Esther, but just for me and my life right now, I cannot put as much focus into this channel that I was hoping to be able to. Esther is going to be taking over the channel, but like I said, you'll still see me around. And if you're interested in following me on my own social media platforms, I will put the links for those below as well. And I would love to have you follow me there. Now, before we get started, I've got the question of the day, and that is, do you like coffee? Yes or no? If you don't like coffee, I'm really curious, what is your favorite beverage apart from water that you enjoy to drink? For me, it is coffee. All right, so let's jump on in. My first tip for everybody is something that maybe you don't think about, and it is your water and the quality of the water that you're using to make your coffee, as well as the temperature of the water that you're using to make your coffee. So most of this video, I'm just going to be focusing on brewing a pot of coffee because that is how we drink it at our house. Me and my husband drink about 2 pots of coffee a day since we are both working at home right now. So you want to make sure a few things with your water. First of all, that if you live somewhere where you have hard water or water that is higher in mineral counts, you're going to want to use a filtered water. Reverse osmosis is actually the best type of water, filtered water you can use, but any type of filtered or pure water is going to be the best. You also want to ensure that you are getting the water hot enough when you are brewing it. That is anywhere from 195 degrees Fahrenheit to 205 degrees Fahrenheit. That's kind of the window that you want to shoot for. And again, if you're using your own coffee pot, one way that you can make sure that it is getting hot enough would be to temp it as it is brewing. You don't want to wait until it's done brewing and in your coffee pot, because obviously the longer it is sitting, even if you just do it as soon as it's done brewing, it will have cooled down considerably. So you're actually going to want to temp it during the brewing process. And if you're using a French press or something else, again, you want to ensure that you are getting that water hot enough. It is just below boiling that you want the water to be. The second important property is proportion. You need to make sure that your coffee grounds to water proportion is good. Now, how do you figure that out? You can Google it. Some bags tell you on the side what they would recommend. Starbucks recommends 2 tablespoons of ground coffee for every 6 ounces of water that you are brewing. Another tip, if you can, the best way is to use a food scale and do it by weight. If you're going to go that route, you want to do 10 grams of coffee for every 180 milliliters of water. The third tip that I have for you all is the grind of the coffee beans. It does make a difference how and when you grind your coffee beans. So the first thing I'm going to recommend is that you always buy whole bean coffee beans and then grind them yourselves at home. Buy a grinder to have at home. This is going to ensure that you get the exact correct grind for whatever you're using for your coffee maker, as well as it will keep it fresh, but we'll talk about that in the next tip. When you grind the bean, it does expose more surface area to the elements like oxygen, which releases the flavor and the freshness of the beans. The most important part about grind is the size and the consistency of it. When you are buying pre-ground coffee, most of them are ground to like a medium setting. However, depending on how you're brewing your coffee, you will need it more fine or more coarse. If you have a French press at home, you're going to use a more coarse grind for your coffee beans versus an espresso machine. If you have an espresso machine at home, you want a very, very fine, almost powder-like grind for your coffee beans. And then there are all sorts of variables in between there. I personally have a cone-shaped mesh filter. So my coffee beans need to be more on the medium to medium coarse grind versus if you have a flat bottom filter or paper filter, you would do more medium to fine grind. If you don't know why this is important, if you do not have the correct grind, it will change the flavor and the strength of the coffee. If you go too coarse for the type of brewer that you have, you'll end up with a very weak, flavorless pot of coffee. And if you end up grinding it too fine, you will end up over extracting the coffee beans, which can leave them really acidic and bitter. All right, so now on to freshness. So we already talked about this a little bit, but you want to make sure that your beans are fresh. And one way you can ensure that they stay fresher longer is by buying whole bean coffee and grinding it immediately before you're using it. Again, so if you want a great cup of coffee, if you're gonna be brewing coffee at home, invest in a grinder, invest in a good coffee pot, and make sure you're grinding your beans right before you brew it. Or in my case, I do grind it the night before and have it all set up so it's ready to brew first thing in the morning. You do want to make sure that you are storing your whole coffee beans somewhere where it's cool and dark in an airtight container. So I have an airtight coffee container that I keep in the cupboard above my coffee pot. So it is airtight, it is not exposed to light or any of the elements. It doesn't get too hot or too cold. One common myth that a lot of people have is that you should freeze your coffee beans. This is actually not an ideal way to store your coffee beans, unless if you're thinking long-term storage, you're not going to be able to use them before they expire. The reason why, if you're using your coffee beans daily, you don't want to use this method is when you're bringing them back and forth in and out of the freezer, the temperature changes, of course, and that will create moisture and condensation inside that bag, which you want to avoid at all costs. Along with freshness, you really do want to make sure that you are using up your whole bean coffee within 2 weeks of opening the package to ensure the best flavor. And again, if you're grinding it, you really want to use ground coffee immediately after grinding it. Once your coffee is brewed, how you can keep it fresh and flavorful is making sure that you brew it or move it into a stainless steel thermos type of carafe. Don't ever leave your coffee pot sitting on the burner. If your coffee pot has a hot plate, you don't want to leave it there for long term, as well as microwaving your coffee. That all of those things are going to affect the flavor and the taste of the coffee and really not good. So only make what you need, drink it while it's hot and fresh, and that will ensure that you have the best flavor. So a little insider Starbucks tip. At Starbucks, they brew their coffee every 30 minutes. So again, it is never sitting there for longer than 30 minutes. You are guaranteed a hot, fresh cup of coffee. They are grinding it immediately before they are brewing it, and they keep the whole beans stored in an airtight container for no longer than 7 days. So those are the 4 tips that I learned as a barista at Starbucks for making the best and perfect cup of coffee every time. Another quick note I do want to add is the type of bean does matter. There are several different types of coffee beans. The 2 most common are Robusta and Arabica, and you are going to want to look for and make sure that the beans you're buying are Arabica coffee beans. Those are better quality. They are grown at higher elevations and therefore will have more flavor characteristics versus the Robusta beans, which are grown at lower levels and therefore less refined flavors and a lower quality. Lastly, I just want to touch on a few tips for personal preference. There are different roasts of coffee, from the very, very lightest, mildest roasts, in Starbucks terms, blonde roast, all the way up to really dark, rich, deep roasts and everything in between. So if you try one type of coffee and you don't like it, that doesn't mean you don't like all coffee. You might just need to experiment with some different roasts along that scale. Another way to make your own cup of coffee personal is adjusting the amount of cream and or sugars that you put in. Personally, if I brew the perfect cup of coffee, I just love to drink it black. If I know I'm going to be able to drink it quick while it's still hot and fresh, I love just a black cup of coffee. However, I do love to to add in just about a teaspoon of heavy cream if maybe the flavor is not one that I prefer. And some of the lightest blend of coffee are even meant to be enjoyed with cream and sugar. So again, when Starbucks released long roast coffee many years ago now, they specifically kind of created those profiles to be enjoyed for people that maybe don't like coffee as much. So it's a very mild blend, and they specifically formulated those beans to taste better when you do add cream or sugar to them. So have fun experimenting with your coffee and figuring out the right way that you like to make your coffee and which flavors you enjoy the best. And I would love to know if any of these tips were useful for you. Thank you so much for watching this video, you guys. So passionate about coffee drinking. You probably know that already by now. I'm almost always holding a cup of coffee in our videos. And I just want to say thank you so much for your love and support of this channel. And for me, in the last 6 months that I've been doing this, I have loved getting to know you guys. And again, it is a very bittersweet decision that I've made to kind of step back and step away from this. But like I did mention, you will see me around. Esther has already ensured that she would like me to continue popping in for visits here or there. If you haven't yet, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, hit that notification bell so you'll be notified of all of the future videos that we post. And while you're down there, answer the question of the day: do you like coffee or not? And if you don't, what is the drink that gets you through the day? Lastly, I am including my personal information down there as well if you'd like to give that a follow, as well as the Mostly Modern Mrs. Facebook page and Instagram page. We'd love to have you follow us over there. Until next time, don't forget to spread love. Cheers.